Hi, I'm back with another vlog, and today we're going to be taking a look at Michael Alig's interview with The Fix. So the article was written by Julia Beattie, and it was published on August 21st of 2015, entitled Michael Alig on Prison Drug Treatment or Lack Thereof. So I'm not going to read the intro for the article because it basically just covered stuff that we've already gone through on this channel ad nauseum, but here is some of what the interview said. So Beattie asks, when you first entered prison, you were still addicted to heroin. Is that when you were given methadone to help curb withdrawals? Alig responds, yes, they take you directly to the infirmary and don't let you continue the process of intake until you get your methadone. And so you're there in this room with all these withdrawing heroin addicts, and we were there for almost 72 hours sleeping on the floor. Really gross and sick. It was awful. Beattie asks, and afterwards you were able to get substances in prison? To which Alig replies, it was easier to get heroin than it was to get my methadone. So, drugs are kind of everywhere, and everyone knows someone that sells? Uh-huh. Do you think that your reputation made a difference? Did people know who you were? Yes. So, that made it easier for people to seek you out? Yes, and it was a real problem because even if I didn't want it, they would bring it to me thinking they were doing me a favor. They genuinely thought they were doing me a favor. There was one guy named Dutch who was the leader of a drug ring. Because there are main peddlers, and then each facility has a president or something, and he just happened to be at this one where I was at. He is white but in the Bloods, and he was a leader of an ecstasy ring in the streets when he was arrested. There was a story about them in Details magazine called The Ecstasy Bandits. He was showing me the story, and apparently he used to send runners to our clubs to sell ecstasy, and so he was kind of, I guess, appreciative of all the money he made at my clubs, so he would tell all of the Bloods, because the Bloods have all the drugs, he would tell them, whenever you see Michael, give him whatever. And so they were coming up to me literally just handing me drugs, and I had more than I could use, and was just giving it away to people. Beattie asks, but normally do people buy them through the commissary or something? Like, how would people pay for drugs? No, you can't do it through the commissary. No, I mean like transfer you funds or something, not that they sell it there. Oh yeah, you could do that, or you could have the money sent to your account. Beattie goes on to ask, you tested positive for opiates in your system and they kicked you out of the drug program? To which Alig responds, yeah, isn't that weird? I didn't know that was a thing. Is that a mandatory law? The medical department and the mental health unit are at odds with the Department of Corrections because they're all separate entities, and the DOC sees drug addiction as a disciplinary problem, obviously, and medical and mental health see it as a medical problem and a psychology problem. And they want to treat it with treatment. They don't want to treat it with punishment, so they're fighting about it all the time, and I mean, there were some huge fights because my psychiatrist kept trying to get me out of solitary confinement because he was saying that it was damaging to me psychologically, because it was such an extended time. And they don't see it that way because that's where they get their money. And they get X amount of dollars for every inmate, and they get more money for inmates who are in solitary because it's supposedly more expensive to house them, and so it's kind of a money thing, which is really gross. But normally, it's a year that you get in solitary if you test positive? A year, but you were in solitary for 2.5, is that correct? 5. So they were trying really hard to get me out. They were trying so hard that the DOC had them under investigation. They were accusing them of accepting bribes from me. Like, because they said they were working so hard to get me out, there must have been some reason for it. And they're like, yeah, there's a reason, because we think it's wrong. And one person actually quit. One of my therapists actually quit because she couldn't stand it. After solitary, you were not given any more methadone. So did you just quit cold turkey? I quit actually in solitary because it's weird that I needed to be told this, but I didn't understand why the media kept calling me a sociopath. And my therapist said that it was because I realized that I committed a terrible crime when I was on drugs, and yet I continued to use drugs. And she said that she understood that it was because I couldn't face what I had done. And so I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. Like, literally, I couldn't shave or anything. So she realized that that's what it was. But to people who don't know me, it looks like I'm having fun and don't care and partying or whatever. And I don't know why I had never seen it that way, because I think I always knew what the truth was. That it was a coping thing? Yes, exactly. And I always knew that. My psychiatrist knew that too. But now looking back, I can see that of course people saw it that way, because I see other people like what's his name? The one who killed the girl in Central Park with the panties. And then he used drugs again outside. And I realized that's how I must have looked. But when you're on drugs, I just didn't see it. Did you do 18 months of drug treatment? You know, I did more than 18 months, but not at once because I would start and stop. And get kicked out? But do you think that the program actually helps people? No. It's just a mandatory... It's not possible, really, for the treatment in prison to do any good because so many people don't want to be there and they disrupt it. They make it impossible for anyone who does. The people who want to get better don't even try because there's no point. Why did they keep having to bounce you around at different prisons? Is that typical? Yes. With me, it was a little bit more than others because they don't like when you get too comfortable in a facility, because they don't want the inmates to feel at home there, because it causes all kinds of problems. Like if you get to know the officers. So especially with me, they thought I was becoming... because the officers would become very friendly with me very quickly, and they don't like that. And do you think that was particularly because you had access to the media? So if they did something wrong, it would get out? Yeah, I think so. Did you at least find any of the counselors helpful? Yes, counselors and the people who are in charge of the drug program actually try really hard, and they really care. And I found myself always feeling sorry for them and feeling ashamed because other inmates were so mean to them. But I noticed how fulfilled and happy they seemed when they felt like something they were doing was helping somebody. And so whenever we did a group therapy or something like that, nobody would participate, but I would participate. And when I did, I would see how happy it made them, and I didn't want them to think that what they were doing was totally going to waste. Because I think most of it was, but a little bit of it wasn't, and I wanted them to know that, and they did know that. So that made me feel good, but they are just mistreated, by the officers too. Really? Yeah, the officers look at them like they're the enemy. Because they don't see the point of having the program? Right, and they think they're like lawyers, that they're just there to kind of fight a legal battle and to remind you that you have rights. You mentioned on the pew that you were on the prescription drug Wellbutrin. I am too, by the way. Do you like it? I do. It's probably one of the most helpful. It's very motivating. Did you start that in prison? Yes. That's good to hear. They actually prescribe antidepressants in prison because I didn't think the doctors would be that attentive. No, they are, because it's not the Department of Corrections, so it's still state-run, but it's real. They're real doctors. And do you see a parole officer? I do, not very often, like 4 times a year. You were telling me that you graduated a drug treatment on Monday, so that was an outpatient program for how long? A year. Did you go to AA and NA type programs? Very similar to that, but they remove the religion? Yeah. So they say to give yourself over to a higher power, but that higher power can be you. Do you find it a challenge to maintain sobriety outside prison? I thought I would, but amazingly, Wellbutrin acts as an opiate blocker, so it wouldn't even work. What was the most popular drug that you saw traded around? Heroin. Oh, I guess actually the most widely used is probably marijuana. Where do people smoke? All over. So, if not sobriety, what was the hardest part of adjusting to the outside world? Alex says, time management. I'm still not able to do it. I'm so busy that I'm not able to get anything done. I don't budget enough time for things, I write a column for Gay Times, pitch TV shows, and so many other things. I'm used to doing a project, but then going to a program, then 5 minutes later I'm in the yard, so I don't realize how long it takes to get places and manage everything. And finally, what did you think of the Party Monster film? I don't know what to say about Party Monster. I mean, it's hard to be objective about a movie that is about your own life. Obviously, I think that no matter what it's like, there is always going to be the feeling that they weren't able to capture the true essence of what was happening. I felt the character development was lacking slightly. I didn't feel like I knew the characters in the movie. The music, clothes, and makeup was spot on because they used Richie Rich and Kabuki to style the party scenes. But besides that, it was a Hollywood, fictionalized account of the truth. James and I never lived together, he never complained about my drug use being out of hand, etc. Not to mention the crime itself. I mean, it can't be easy trying to portray something that in itself is unrealistic. They actually toned down the craziness because they felt normal people wouldn't be able to relate or even believe the way things really were. So that's pretty much it for the article. I will leave a link for this below. I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to check out some of my other Club Kid videos, and if you haven't yet subscribed, please consider doing so by clicking the kitty, and I will see you guys again for my next upload.